My name is Jason Bagwell. I'm Department Chair of Horticulture at Spartanburg Community College, School of Horticulture. Be sure to check us out on our website to see all the classes that we offer and what we can do for the industry and possibly for you. We have a sustainable agriculture program, so just excited to be here, tell you a little bit about obviously us if you're not aware, but also to help you with some garden landscape situations you may be encountering. Right now, springtime, everybody's excited to plant, but also excited to get rid of some pests and remember the ones that kind of give you some problems. So we're going to go through sort of the top 10 most frequent pests that you encounter in the landscape in your yard. Some of them be some weeds, insects, and some plant diseases. So the first one I want to cover is probably the most common in our area. It's a winter annual. Now let me explain that real quick. Winter annual means that it's going to germinate when the night temperatures begin to cool down about mid-September. Henbit. This is a broadleaf winter annual that stays somewhat small, won't get much more than about 3 inches tall till about Halloween. It can bloom, then turn around and bloom again in the springtime, which is typically when you're seeing it right now blooming. Purple blooms to it. Henbit, henbit. Definitely turf grass, ornamental beds, it's everywhere, but it's fixing to die out in the heat. So henbit's probably one of the most frequent winter annuals. Can be controlled by pre-emerge. Big fan of pre-emerge in the fall to get rid of those weeds that you see mainly right now in the spring, especially blooming. White clover. The thing about white clover is it's a cool season perennial. Perennial means it comes back every year. So we all know that white clover has this little white flower on it, again right now starting to bloom, but it is actually a perennial. It spreads by stolons. So the saying is first year it sleeps, second year it creeps, third year it leaps. So it really starts to take over your turf grass and places like that, even if you're using a pre-emerge. It doesn't do well in controlling that because it's something that comes back every year. Being a perennial, persists through the summer. The pre-emerges only control annuals. The third one we want to look at is annual bluegrass. Poa annua is its name. It's the most common grass weed that we have. Again, wintertime, winter weeds are our biggest problem for us, primarily in this area of the state. So it's going to germinate in September along with your broadleaf winter annuals, and it's going to be a very small, short grass, dark green, looks absolutely gorgeous. Fall, winter, and then all of a sudden, again, right now, March into April, it's going to start blooming. So you see these white seed heads everywhere in your yard, and again, probably in your flower beds that it's a grass, and you're like, where'd this come from? Well, it's been there. And it'll seed, and then those seeds germinate again, as I mentioned, about mid-September. So that's annual bluegrass. The next one we're going to look at is crabgrass. Crabgrass is, again, something we think about now. We hear about it now. It's a little cool right now for crabgrass to be germinating, but it's not going to be long. So if you have irrigation, especially through the summer, that you're using in your turf grass, then crabgrass is likely, if we have a rainy summer, a wet late spring, then that just feeds those crabgrasses to germinate. So pre-emerge again around about now to try to control crabgrass is good. Other than that, it's difficult to get rid of in a lot of grasses just because of the density that occurs. The next one is common Bermuda grass. A lot of people, including myself, have common Bermuda grass in their turf grass and want to get rid of it. Very, very, very difficult. Again, it's a perennial, spreads by stolons, creeps into your flower beds. Really, Roundup is about it. There are some options for controlling Bermuda grass in turf situations, but those turf situations would be unique, such as fescue, zoysia. If you have a hybrid Bermuda lawn that's been sodded and then you got common Bermuda growing in it, there's no choice but Roundup. So definitely one of the most difficult weeds, even though a lot of people are happy with it growing in their landscape. Some people despise it because it creeps into their beds and becomes a tremendous nuisance. The next one we're going to transition to is an insect, white grubs. Anything that's a beetle, its larva is a grub. And so on the slide, there's a life cycle of the grubs. Going back to the fall recommendation of a pre-emerge to control winter weeds, fall recommendation for controlling grubs. Grubs feed on cool season, tall fescue, grass, roots, fall, winter, spring. Then they become an adult, and then they'll feed like Japanese beetles, for example. They're gonna come out in the summertime, they're gonna feed on your ornamentals, and you're like, get rid of them. Yeah, you can try to get rid of them, but they're on the move. So the best way to get rid of beetles in the summer, if you can make it to the fall, is to put out an insecticide in your lawn, in your beds, to control those grubs in the fall. They're gonna lay their eggs late summer, and then the larvae are close to the surface feeding. And so you don't see turf damage until possibly the next year. So for example, I mentioned fescue. It compromises the root system, but it's able to withstand it through the fall, winter, spring, and the summer heat kills it. So we're like, the heat killed my grass. Yes, but it may have been because the roots were compromised by the grubs feeding in the fall, again, a little bit in the winter and the spring. The next one's fire ants. Everybody hates them. Everybody pretty much has them. Baits, I'm a big fan of putting out baits. There's different type baits. I'm not going to start naming names because there's a number of them out there. Go to your local garden center such as Lichtenfeld's. They'll be glad to help you out. But basically with fire ants, start in March, definitely by mid to late March, and for sure by 1st of April with your first application. You can broadcast it out. You don't have to broadcast the entire area. You can do what's called strip broadcasting. Concentrate around sidewalks, driveways, your home, bed edges. You can concentrate it, and then they will go and forage. They will go and get that bait, take it back to the colony, and it takes time, but it's extremely effective long term. Then you can do it again, usually around early August, to get those late flushes of fire ant populations. Of course, you can treat the mounds, but it don't take a whole lot to do it. So those are the major insects that we run into in the landscape. Now we want to move to diseases. I'm going to start with the turfgrass disease that is extremely common in this area, brown patch. Tall fescue, cool season grass is by far its biggest target. Starts usually for us 1st of June. So if you're putting out any control measures, fungicides in your turf grass, you want to start by the 1st of June, whether you see anything or not. Humidity. So I'm going to run through real quick the basics on brown patch prevention. Mow your tall fescue high and dry. It needs to be around 4 inches starting by May. Now I keep mine at 4 inches all year long, just keeps it simple. But 4 inches I know is really tall, but brown patch feeds primarily from the top down on the foliage. And you can see that in some of the images. You have this irregular shaped lesion on the leaf, so you can look closely at that as you start looking for brown patch in your turf grass. And then it just kind of spreads into these small irregular shaped circles. Tan brown turf grass starts to die out, mainly in the summer. Remember I said starting 1st of June, so it's going to last all the way through September. And so basically what I try to do is by the mowing it high and dry, meaning the foliage is dry when you mow it, and staying around that 4 inches, you're going to get a little bit of brown patch, but it takes a long time for it to really reach the crown, the base of the plant, which ends up killing the grass. So come transition, fall transition, those cool nights, mid-September, it mows away. You put your fertilizer out in the fall, and it's like it immediately goes away. So brown patch is a big one. Putting your fertilizer out late February by 1st of March on your cool season grass, and not real high nitrogen. Really nothing more than like 20% nitrogen is all you need in the spring. We don't want to push a lot of growth late in the spring when that tall fescue starts getting hot and starts wanting to go dormant. Which again for us is going to be very soon in May when it starts heating up. Things are going to slow down. It's going to be green, but it's going to start stressing it because of cool season grass. The next one is an ornamental plant, roses, mainly knockout roses. The rose rosette disease, it's a virus. there's not really anything we can do with it, unfortunately. Huge fan of roses, especially knockouts, but unfortunately, not a lot of options in controlling it, so not a big recommendation there of planting those. If you do have them, enjoy them while they last. I don't recommend pruning them back. Some people do. If you look at the new growth, especially through the summer, but the new growth, there'll be like a witch's broom, really tight foliage and stems, more of a reddish colored leaves, a little distorted look to it than the rest of the plant. And then it just declines within a couple of years and you end up losing them. So like I said, it's not much we can do. It's spread by mite, and you're not gonna see it. So it's very difficult to get rid of as well. So just keep that in mind. If you have them, enjoy them. So the last one we're gonna look at is Phytophthora. I know that's a really big word. Don't worry about it. Just know it's a root rot. And it's one of the most common diseases we run into in our landscape with ornamental plants. Plants such as azaleas, rhododendrons, acuba, gardenias, a lot of plants, even trees. If you see on the slide, this tree in this picture has the trunk that is what we call bleeding. The root system being compromised, the vascular system of the trees being compromised, and it begins to leak out some of the sap. And so that plant is on the decline. A lot of times on shrubs, the plants will begin to what we call flag. The leaves will kind of wilt down. You think, hey, it needs water. No, that's not a good thing. The leaves will wilt down but turn brown, and they kind of stay on the plant. So different plants will have a little different symptoms, but it's the most common because of our soil types. Our heavy soils, our clay-based soils, retain moisture, especially through the winter. So you have plants that look really good going into the winter, and then we have a wet winter, like we've had this year, and then they struggle through the summer because they're trying to flush, they're trying to grow, but they have a compromised root system from the Phytophthora diseases. So soil conditioners, compost, amend your soils, use topsoil, go a little light on the mulch around the plants, use pine needles around a lot of these plants. You want that soil surface to dry out. You don't want it to stay wet. So those are some of the most frequent things we run into in our landscape, sort of the top 10, if you will, and it all depends on where you're at. So to kind of wrap this up, again, my name is Jason Bagwell. I'm Department Chair of Horticulture at Spartanburg Community College. Check out our website, check out the classes that we offer and how we may be able to help to you if you're interested in taking classes. We have a sustainable agriculture program with classes being offered this summer. Feel free to contact me. I'd be glad to help in any way I can. And if you're looking for a great place that sells some amazing plants, Licton Felts. And when you come, plan on staying a while because there's a lot to see and it's worth hanging out. So appreciate it, and you guys have a great spring.
Well, we want to thank you for joining us for this week's Garden Speak. We want to thank Mr. Bagwell from Spartanburg Community College for joining us as well. Jason, if folks have questions about disease or pests, who should they direct that to so they get the best advice?
We have a tremendous resource in the upstate. It's called Clemson Extension. There's a plant problem clinic through Clemson University that in Clemson Extension, that if you go to your local extension office, contact them, make sure you take what you need to. They'll be glad to give that information to you, plant samples, how much of the plant. You take it to your local extension office, they may be able to tell you right there. Quick, easy fix. Then you would go to a garden center such as Licton Felts for problem-solving material. Otherwise, they will send it on off to the plant problem clinic, and they will do a complete diagnosis, and then the extension agent will follow up with you. So just a great team of horticulture efforts here in the upstate ready for you.
Yeah, we really are blessed to have that kind of resource in the upstate. I know a lot of areas don't, but fortunately Clemson does a great job with their department. And so with that, that'll conclude today's Garden Speak. Join us every Saturday morning at 9:15 for the latest. Thanks.
Thank you.